Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Brian Thatcher, and welcome to Mercy Unbound. It's a series that aims to provide hope and avenue for healing, and one that will help you understand and then live the great mercy of God. With me today, I have a very special guest. I'm so tickled to have him. Father Michael Delaney is up in Montreal, Canada. He is the rector of the Oratory of Saint Joseph, and we're going to talk about Saint Andre. Brother Andre, as many of us know him by, and also the Oratory. It's a place that I really want to visit in the worst way. And Father's going to share with us about the Oratory and all how it got built and their pilgrimages and what's going on up there right now. So, Father, welcome so much to Mercy Unbound.
Thank you very much, Brian. I appreciate this opportunity, and I look forward to sharing this conversation with you. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, before we get into Brother Andre, tell us about your order. How's it founded? Who's the founder, and what's your charisms?
I'm a member of the Congregation of Holy Cross, which is an order that was founded in France, post-revolutionary France. And we're in 16 nations in the world and quite a bit in the United States, and obviously here in Canada. Our order was founded by Father Basil Moreau in France, and his vision was to bring together a group of priests and brothers, as well as his hope was for sisters, all into one congregation. Unique about the Congregation of Holy Cross is that we have priests and brothers under one congregation. All are equal in the congregation. We have different roles, but the brothers and the priests, we share much. And we actually just elected our first Brother Superior General this past summer at our general chapter. It was a decree because Pope Francis had made a modification to the canon law that we could elect a brother, the congregations like ours, who had the mix of priests and brothers. And we elected a wonderful Superior General. And but we also have the Holy Cross Sisters. And even though they're not in the same congregation, we consider all of us the family of Holy Cross. And there's 3 branches of sisters. One are the Marianites, and the other 2 are based either in the US or in Canada. So there's a lot of sense of familiarity. The image of the Holy Family was a very important image for our founder, Father Moreau. And so with the priest brothers and sisters, and now as we also consider all of our lay colleagues to be part of this Holy Cross family. A charism, our message is Ave Crux Spes Unica, the cross is our only hope. We believe that we all have to live the cross, we will live the cross, but we can also come to trust that by living it, there will be life, there will be resurrection, as we are promised, and that even in the crosses of our daily lives, much of our lives as we accompany people in every aspect, in any ministry, helping them really to carry their crosses and to bring them hope. We are also considered educators in the faith, whether in the classroom, in the parish, in our social ministries, direct service with the poor, our mission work. Somehow, all that we do is helping educate people in the faith.
You know, I haven't thought about this for a long time, but our older kids went to the Catholic school here, local in Brandon, Florida, outside Tampa. And I'm almost sure Sister Irene, the principal, and a few others were Sisters of the Holy Cross, and beautiful, beautiful people.
That's great. That's great. Oh, to have the sisters as part of our family it's a wonderful gift. I've worked in different parts of the world with Holy Cross, and it's always been a great blessing that we have the priests, the brothers, and the sisters working together. It's a great model for church.
That's awesome, Father. I found it fascinating, you know, Brother Andre, here he is. You can share with us about his life, and a porter, a doorman, and he becomes, wasn't he the first saint in your order?
He is our first recognized canonized saint.
Right.
Some say we have other ones, but our first recognized saint, Brother Andre, yes. Yeah, it's a great story of humility and of service, and it's inspiring.
Now, tell us about his early life. Wasn't he orphaned early, and Take as long as you need because it's a great story.
Yeah, his story is very unique. It's not an uncommon story for a young man of his time. Um, when he was born, his mother died young and his father died when he was about 12, and he was orphaned. And he didn't have all that much access to formal education past the initial years. So even his own abilities academically were going to be limited because he had to go to work. He was one of 9 children of the family. And he was from a rural area, probably now by car, it's about 45 minutes from Montreal. It's called Mont-Saint-Grégoire, St. Gregory, Mont-Saint-Grégoire, and a farming area. And it's beautiful. We still have his family church there in the plot of land where his home was. We have a shrine out, we have a special place for prayer and remembrance out there. And once a year, we have a pilgrimage to the family church. This year, we had 9 buses of pilgrims that went from Montreal, and many others went in their own vehicles. And it's a beautiful day, beautiful to share that out there in his land in honor of him. Brother Andre, at about the age of 15, he actually went to the United States, to Massachusetts and to Rhode Island, where he worked in the textile mills. He was able to get a job, he was able to earn a living, and he was there for about 3 years. And he probably came back with one of those famous Rhode Island or Massachusetts accents, I don't know. And when he came back, he reconnected with his parish priest with the great desire to serve in the church. And they discerned it, and the priest wrote to one of the bishops, who then recommended him to the Congregation of Holy Cross, who had arrived in the Montreal area not all that long before, and probably 20 years, 25 years before. And he knew the priests and the brothers and their school. They had a school that had been started in Montreal, very well known, and it still goes on, Collège Notre Dame College. And it's a high school. And the bishop wrote to the provincial. And what's beautiful about this letter to that provincial is it says that, please consider him for your community. I am sending you a saint, and it would be good for you to receive him. And that we have in this archives of this communication from the bishop. So he was received as a postulant and went through the novitiate, and he started his life here after that. And he's had a lot of vocational jobs. He was good at fixing a lot of things, and he worked at the school for 40 years. The school, which is across the street from us today, and is where he started his ministry. He was the doorman at the school for 40 years. And he also did he probably put the coal in the furnace, and he fixed the pipes, and he did many other things. But what's interesting is that in those 40 years, when you think about it, he not only knew the students, he would have known their parents and eventually grandparents, because these would be families that would send generations. So people came to know him, and he came to know people all across the city because they would come to the school. And that often they would ask him to pray for them, and he would offer them his blessing. And it really grew out of this ministry that he had. And his ministry was one of welcoming them into the school and greeting them every day. So it's one of those very basic charisms that I think we can never, ever forget, as to how we welcome one another, how we just greet the person coming in the door, or when we go outside the door of the church to invite people in. It's crucially important for us to have this same sense of welcome and acceptance. And it's something that we strive to do with everybody who comes to the oratory today.
That's awesome. That gift of presence, it really is a gift, because so many of us in our hurried lives, we just don't stop and realize what's going on right in front of our eyes.
And Brian, you're right. And then when we think about it at the end of the day, or what gave me most meaning today, it's really not what we did. It's how we shared it with others.
Yeah.
We all might have done a lot of work, and maybe we taught the class well, and we did our work well. Maybe I preached okay at the Mass, but how did I engage with others? And those are the hallmarks really of what ministry is about, but also what really is what's transforming about engaging with one another, whether it's through the church or whatever. It's that interaction that's so important. And how are we received? And how do we welcome the other person into our lives?
Didn't he have poor health as well?
He had a lifetime of struggle with health issues. Yes, it was, I'm not going to say it was chronic, but there were ongoing issues that always seemed to limit him, but it never stopped him. He lived to a well advanced age, and he struggled with those issues, probably came from some of his upbringing as youth, the challenges of youth, but it affected him, but it did not stop him.
You know, it's a classic religious story in a way about what the world says and what the spiritual life says, because in the worldly sense, he'd be the last guy you'd pick to be chosen for a noble position. And yet in the spiritual sense, he's a role model, isn't he, for holiness and obedience?
Very much so. I think we're going to probably talk about it later, but at the end of his life, with his funeral, he's probably the last person that some would think that 1 million people in 1937 would arrive at his funeral over a period of 5 days, the vigil to say goodbye. In January in Montreal, we're talking winter, and probably with sometimes what we consider the most important values, people might be shocked. But I've seen this with other wonderful priests that I've known, the people who have truly given themselves in their mission work, in their lives, in their ministry. The outpouring of love for them when they are sick or if they pass away has been tremendous. And I've been able to witness that with others. So I have this real clear view of probably the impact that he had on the lives of so many, because he was able to touch their hearts. He was able to connect with them at that level of the soul. And that's what's so important.
Yeah.
He was honest and transparent.
You mentioned he's at the school for all those years, and how did his prayer ministry get started? How did that evolve and then blossom?
Well, it started really with people as he came to know them every day by doing his ministry. It started with their requesting him to pray for them. They had their needs. He would ask about their family. He would know their parents. He would know their other members. And they would continue to ask him for his blessing and for his prayer. And then he would offer his blessing, and he would be praying for the sick and for praying for their healing and praying for their recovery. Or if people shared the loss of someone, he would pray for them in their grief. And it just grew. And as he came to know more and more people, I think because of his charism, it just drew people to him, and he became well known. People knew who Brother Andre was. People came from far away. They later in life started coming from much further away to receive his blessing and to seek healing from him. I had 2 great uncles, the brothers of my grandmother on my mother's side, the McGrath family. John and William Hogan from Syracuse. John was born with polio, and William was severely injured in World War I. They made many trips once William could travel to see Brother Andre for his blessing. They traveled from Syracuse, which was then quite a distance, and travel at the time, to come because they'd heard of him and they knew others who'd been there, and they came for his blessing. And this, I just see how this was probably replicated with people from near and far. And actually, they also participated in January of 1937 at his funeral. They made the trip from Syracuse to Montreal in January to be able to pray and give thanks for his life for them and for the healing that they felt he'd offered them. It's really a beautiful story to see my family connection with it directly.
That's awesome. As his ministry began to grow, I can see where there might be some problems at the school with all these people. Tell us if
well, it's an interesting question. And, I was many years in education, and I know what you have to do to run a school. Okay. And I could understand the situation. He was attracting people and running a full-fledged healing ministry at the front door of the school. And that I'm sure that some people had problems with that because it was probably very distracting from the functioning. But I think also what ended up happening, he did have people who might have been somewhat, I don't want to say against him, but they might have doubted his authenticity. They might have doubted what his presence was really about. So there was some conflict over that. But he was always extremely honest. But I think he was also a tenacious person. I think he knew what he wanted. And I think he felt called by God to do it. He never saw that he was harming anybody. So if people might have reacted maybe in that way, he acknowledged it, but there was never anything intentional. But eventually, I believe what happened is he moved right across the street to the property that the Holy Cross community had to be able to start his dream, which was to build a chapel, because he had this dream to build a chapel to dedicate to Saint Joseph. And so that was his hope. And I think all of the matters, and after 40 years, most of his life was really dedicated to this healing ministry and this blessing ministry. And he would also be asked to go visit the sick across Montreal. It became known, and there were some great pictures of him in his winter coat and his hat and carrying his briefcase. He always had this briefcase, probably with prayer books and blessing oils. The oil of Saint Joseph, which we have here, is very important for the blessings with Brother Andre. And he probably had that all in his bag as he would carry it to visit the sick and to once people would reach out to him. So eventually that ministry, the community authorized him, meaning the Holy Cross community, to start his ministry across the street, and a small chapel started being built. And that was the actual beginnings of what's now the St. Joseph's Oratory.
Now, did he have to get approval from the local archbishop to build the oratory, or is that, how does that work?
Well, I know I'm kind of old, but I wasn't here then. But it would have had to go through the archdiocese, and much of it was with the support of the archdiocese in its original years. So the people of Quebec and the people of the Church Quebec really helped to build it, because they were the ones so enamored with him. And he got the permissions from the provincial, and the provincial made a requirement saying you cannot be there alone. You must have a priest there with you, okay? Because to live in this community, you must have a priest there, because, and Andre wanted a priest to be able to offer mass, okay? And so they worked it out that a retired priest, and there was a story, I wish I could tell you the name right now, but the story of a priest who was totally deaf, but Andre got him to celebrate the mass, and he was fulfilling the requirement of both the provincial and the archbishop to be able to have this mass celebrated in this new chapel. And so, yes, there was always in coordination, because establishing any new religious entity like that, you would need the permission of the archdiocese, or at that time the diocese. But that would have been a regular part of the communication through the Holy Cross provincial with the bishop.
Now, did Saint Andre always have a devotion to Saint Joseph? Did that evolve over time, or was it since a young child? Or
everything we know tells us that since a young boy he was dedicated to Saint Joseph. And I always, in his prayer, I think probably as an orphan child and as one who lost his father, he probably was very drawn to this earthly father of Jesus. And the way that Saint Joseph was as a loving, tender father to his son, and as a spouse to Mary, and as the head of the Holy Family, I think was just a great example. And we recently had our year of Saint Joseph. And even though it was during COVID, we did many activities, mostly online, but we did a lot of prayerful reflection on Saint Joseph in new ways. And I do believe that that probably had a big impact, his own family situation. But the other thing to know is that Saint Joseph is the patron of Quebec and the patron saint of Canada. And in 2024, we'll be celebrating 400 years since it was designated that Saint Joseph was the patron of what is now Canada. It wasn't Canada at the time, but of this territory, it was dedicated to Saint Joseph. So it's part of the culture. It's part of the culture of the church, the dedication to Saint Joseph, and here in Quebec as well as in the entire nation of Canada. So I'm sure that all of that played a great influence in him, as well as his own personal story of this father of Jesus who was so loving and humble and sacrificed so much in discerning God's will. And that's what Joseph was in so many ways. And I think that that was the example that he continued to look at.
Father, share with us, there may be non-Catholics who watch this and say, well, what are these guys praying to Saint Joseph for? You know, why don't we just go right to Jesus? Can you share some thoughts on that?
Well, that's a great question. I'm a big fan of Saint Joseph. I think that, as I was just saying, I think his role in the life of Jesus, in our salvation history, our own, shows us one who listened to God's word and obeyed, did what he believed God was asking him to do, even when he didn't understand it. But he followed in faith. So I think this example of faith. I think the protector of the family, the leader of the family, the sense of family. And I think it's even very pertinent today to people, regardless of faith. And even, you know, there's so many different ways that families are living these days of what is considered family. We're looking for examples. And I think he offers that example from families of today. People of other faiths, we could talk about Christian and non-Christian, I think are able to resonate with that concept of the Father of Jesus. Interestingly, I think people might know this, that Jesus is recognized as a prophet in many of the world's great religions. So those that are patriarchal have a great respect for the Father of Jesus, the earthly Father of Jesus. So if the religion recognizes Jesus as a prophet, and they have come to know that, and they would know the role of Mary and the role of Joseph, they would be reverence of that. And I think that we experience that here with many of the non-Christians who come to the oratory regularly. And we have many, we could talk about that if you would like. And so I think there's a message there to understand the humanness of Jesus, of Joseph, for the life of Jesus. I have this thought of, you know, for the most of Jesus's life, Joseph was his dad. We know that he was the town carpenter. I grew up in a small town of Skaneateles, New York. I know that the local tradesmen, you know, if you had the plumber come, and if the family couldn't pay this month, they could pay next month. You know, if a family was in need, people would offer services to the family. I imagine Joseph was like that. He had a great skill. He had a great craft that people needed, his services. But I'm sure that he was very compassionate with all of the people of the town where they grew up. So the person that they came to know and who Jesus saw as an example as a man and how to live a human life, he was the example for him. And I think that that kind of impact on trying to imagine how Joseph lived and his willingness and his humility and his trust. You know, he was a behind the scenes kind of guy, but he was very faithful. So I think that's a great example for all of us, whatever our religious practice might be.
You know, in the Divine Mercy message, the words below that image behind me is, Jesus, I trust in you, which is easy when things are going well.
That's right.
But when the sufferings and the trials come, and yet Brother Andre probably took off from St. Joseph. You mentioned about, didn't he just want to do God's will? That was it. I mean, at the end of the day, that's all that mattered.
That's right. He just was on this, we call it sometimes today, on this journey, but he was in this relationship with God of discerning how to live every day responding to the will of God. Yes. Without having, as I imagine him, without having any of these long-term goals, without having any of these marks of what the success was. It was to live faithfully and to share the love of God, the compassion and the forgiveness, the healing with others with whom he met. Yeah. I think that that was like his daily goal that he lived, and to be faithful doing it.
You know, it's like the 12-step program, one day at a time. And
right.
We get so ahead of ourselves, me included. How long did it take to build the oratory?
Well, it happened in many phases. The building oratory in many phases. The original chapel evolved, and we still have now that original chapel. It's been moved from the original site. It's up on the hill behind the main oratory now. That took about 8 years to evolve. And then during the lifetime of Brother Andre, and we have some beautiful pictures. Maybe I could send them to you in some sense that you might find a way to share them, of Brother Andre at the original chapel. And that's where he met people. So when my great uncles came and all these other people from all over Canada and the northern part of the United States especially came to visit him, he would welcome them and greet them in that chapel. And he had a little bedroom up on the top floor, very simple. And it's when people visit now, they get to see it. And it's really a great testimony of what his life was. During his lifetime, the crypt church and the crypt level was built. And then his dream was always to build a big basilica. We are on the hill, the highest point in the city of Montreal. So we are very visible, and people, it's a beautiful nature spot where we are. So we're recognized for that, and we invite people to come and enjoy the grounds and enjoy the way of the cross that we have through some beautiful gardens. And of course, people come every night, winter and summer, to see the sunsets, because it faces off to the west and it's spectacular to watch the sunsets. And so back to the building of the crypt level, which is where the church, which he would have been in and he would have prayed in, was built well into his lifetime. And he would have been there many years. And then all the testimonies to St. Joseph are there with the vigil lamps, the St. Joseph oil prayer space. All of that is in that crypt level, which is the main entry level. If somebody's walking in, they have to walk up the hill a bit, but then they get in. And then the plans were always to build the basilica. Now, he died in 1937. And so the plans, it was being built. And then it was finished in the early 1950s, which is what we have now, the dome and the full basilica church. So we have the large basilica, which seats over 2,000 people. And we have the crypt church, which actually seats about 800 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a national shrine as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's a protected historical mark, and it's a national shrine. It's the largest church in Canada, largest Catholic church in any church in Canada. And it's also known as the most significant, largest shrine to Saint Joseph in the world.
As you know, I'm from Tampa, but love to take a visit up there. Do you have pilgrimages? And where would people stay type thing?
Yeah, we have a lot of people who come for personal retreats. We have small groups that come. We have parish groups that come. We have people who come to do like a religious tourism of Quebec, of the shrines of Quebec, like here, Saint Andre Bessette in Quebec City, for example. So we have many different reasons that people might come for religious pilgrimages. And oh yes, we have a whole crew of people that do the guides. We often arrange for each group something special if they're looking for something special, to have some people speak with them and to share certain aspects. We have a small mid-range hotel on our campus.
Okay.
It's called Pope John the 23rd. And there's probably 20 to 25, maybe it's 20 or 22 rooms, different styles of rooms for different price levels, but it's not expensive. Breakfast comes with it. And then you also have the use of the grounds and the use of the house. So we can accommodate groups, and many of the groups who are coming also might stay in hotels nearby.
One thing I didn't mention, Father, was what is the website there? How can people look you up and find out information on taking a pilgrimage and visiting the oratory?
Okay. The easiest thing to do is to go to your search engine and type in St. Joseph's Oratory, Montreal, and it'll take you right to the website. But the website is the following, okay? It's Saint with a hyphen Joseph.org, and then the slash mark, and then put EN with a slash mark, because that's for English. Saint Joseph, Saint-Joseph.org without the slash gets you the French site.
Right.
And you can always just click in the right corner to go from French back into English. but it's saint-joseph.org/en/ and that would take you there. But I would just recommend going to, if it's Google or whatever you have, and type St. Joseph's Oratory, it'll bring you there quicker. You don't have to remember that thing. Yeah.
Right. Well,
But
Father,
that'll have all the information about visiting, about the activities of the oratory, the musical concerts, everything that we have, the museum that we have. And also there's a whole section of it about lodging if people want to
great.
stay here.
Is there summer when most people visit that are from elsewhere, or I assume, or?
Well, I've been here since the COVID closure. We were closed for a long time. So really, as of March, we've been opened again and at our full welcoming capacity. And through the summer, it's been a very healthy trafficking of visitors.
Right.
We're not at the level that they were prior to COVID, but we're really, like on the Feast of St. Joseph, for example, that's a very big feast here, obviously, on March 19th, and we have the Novena before that. This year, and we had just opened up, we had more than 15,000 people here on March 19th.
Awesome.
So normally, I guess it's around 20,000, but we have the 9 days of the Novena, and we offer it in French and in English. They can be here personally. You can also always see it online through our website. We do it through a YouTube channel. We have other things on our Facebook page, but the masses are all on YouTube. And we have 2 Sunday masses a week on YouTube, and as well, a French and an English. And I think that when you say about what season of the year, each one offers something different. But the summer is the busiest time. The month of August is perhaps the busiest. But things started up well with the Feast of St. Joseph, with the celebration of Holy Week and Easter. And then through May, Pentecost is for me, it's a very important day. And a lot of people often come on 3-day weekends as well, because they might come from Toronto, they might come from New York or Vermont, and which are very close. So I probably spring, summer, and fall. Fall is beautiful in Montreal, but we're open every day of the year, and we have people here every single day of the year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Father, one last question. When we began the interview, I was kind of expecting a French-speaking priest. And
I speak French, but not, as an American.
But weren't you the first English-speaking rector?
Yeah, I'm actually the first rector who is not from Quebec here. So French is not my native language, obviously. I speak 6 languages. I've lived in Latin America, I've lived in Europe, in my ministry and in my studies. But yes, I was the first non-Quebec Holy Cross priest named rector. They decided to do an international search when Father Claude Grew finished his term after 15 years. And I was at that time, I had returned from Latin America. I was directing the Holy Cross Mission Center, which supports the international mission of our ministries in Asia, Africa, Haiti, and throughout Latin America. And I was directing that, and I was invited by our Superior General and the Canadian Provincial to consider the position as rector here of the Oratory.
Awesome.
It's a big change for people, because I try to fully respect the culture and everything, but my background is different and my experience of church has been different, but I've learned a lot, and we get along fine. It's just, it's a growing experience for everybody.
Right. Father, any closing thoughts on Saint Andre you want to leave with the audience?
Well, I think that he offers us just a great example. Andre Bessette, his simplicity of life, his trust in God, his openness. I think about this when our Sikh community of Montreal comes here on Saturdays to pray, because they find it a place of welcome, and they find it a holy place, and they light their candles and they pray. I think of this when we offer Mass in many different languages, but on any given day, people are here from every corner of the world, or they've been born there, but Montreal, Quebec, there's a very international, multicultural city. I think about who Brother Andre was then in his time, and he welcomed so many people in to pray, and whoever came to him. I'm reminded of that every day, is how do we welcome those who come to us, especially the most vulnerable, the sick, those who want healing, those who have pain in their lives, those who feel they're on the margins, those who might have mental illness, and actually find this to be a very safe and secure place because they're loved here.
Yeah.
They feel welcomed here, and they're known by name, and they're valued. And so I try to take this image of what Brother Andre was in his day, and we all try to do this here, is those that we welcome here, we welcome the stranger, we welcome the person. We believe that everybody is good, and that probably everybody needs to be healed from something, and that's how we want them to have an experience available here. And to also enjoy the beauty of it, and to enjoy this encounter with God through the sacraments that we offer, the confession, the blessings, the masses, the music, the art, whatever it might be, in our own nature preserves here. Somehow we just want to always remember, who did Andre said, go to Joseph, come to Joseph. And we want to say the same today to the immigrant, to the refugee, to the poor, to the homeless, whoever it might be. You're welcome. And I think that that's the way that I try to keep his presence alive every day. And I know that our entire pastoral team and our staff here try to do the same.
That's beautiful. Well, Father, I want to thank you again for joining me on Mercy Unbound. Keep up the great work up there. People, I hope you enjoyed the show. Please share it, and consider a pilgrimage up to the Oratory, and let your friends know about the podcast. And I hope all of you have a blessed and wonderful day. And thanks for joining us for Mercy Unbound.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel for the video portion. The podcast can be heard at anchor.fm/Dr. Brian, Bryan Thatcher, Thatcher, and on all the major podcast forums. I would love to speak at your church or conference, and please consider supporting our efforts to spread the truth to a hurting world. Thank you again. And for more information, go to the website at drbrianthatcher.com.